Some things you stumble across by chance. Others find you because a promise was riding toward you the whole time. Before we begin, tell us where in the world you are watching this from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories. The sun was slipping low when Mary Dalton spotted it. She was walking her usual path through the pine woods behind her house, the quiet broken only by the crunch of leaves under her boots. Something dark caught her eye near the roots of an old oak, a scrap of leather half buried under wet soil. She crouched, brushing away dirt until the symbol emerged, the winged skull and flaming wheel of the Hells Angels. It was a biker's back patch torn clean from a jacket. Mary froze. Her late husband, David, had never been a biker. He'd been a soldier. But she knew enough about the Angels to realize this wasn't just lost clothing. She carried it home wrapped in her scarf, planning to toss it in a drawer until she figured out what to do. That night, the sound of distant engines cut through the still air. It started as a low growl, then grew louder, closer, until it was rattling her windows. Headlights appeared at the end of her road, lined up in a way that made the night feel smaller. Mary's heart pounded. Whoever was coming, they were coming for her. Mary stepped onto her porch as the first Harley rolled into her driveway, its headlight washing over her like an interrogation lamp. More bikes followed, 7 in total, their riders wearing black leather vests, each one stitched with the same skull and wheel she'd found in the woods. The leader cut his engine, and the others followed suit, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the ticking of cooling chrome. He pulled off his helmet, revealing a face weathered by wind and years, his hair silver at the temples. "Evenin', ma'am," he said, voice low and gravelly. "Name's Jack Monroe." Mary clutched the patch tighter. "I think I found something of yours," she said. Jack's eyes dropped to her hands. For a heartbeat, he said nothing. Then he stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel. "That's not mine," he said finally. "It belonged to a brother who ain't with us anymore." His gaze lifted to hers. "And if you found it, then maybe he meant for you to." Mary hesitated, the weight of his words sinking in. Jack didn't look like a man who wasted sentences. "Your brother?" she asked. "Not by blood," he said, "but closer than that. The name was Tom Riker. Served in the Corps. Rode with us after he got home. He didn't make it last winter." Mary's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Jack gave a small nod, as if he'd heard those words 100 times and never quite knew what to do with them. "That patch you found, it's from his cut," he explained. "We buried him with it. So if it's out there in the woods, someone dug it up." Mary frowned. "I don't understand. Why bring it here?" Jack's gaze softened just enough to show it wasn't an accident. "Because before he died, Tom told us something. Said if we ever came across a certain woman named Mary Dalton, we were to give her what he couldn't." Mary blinked, the name hitting her like a wave. "I never met him," she said. Jack's lips curved into something between a smile and a grimace. "He said you'd say that." The Angels followed Jack's lead as he stepped toward the porch, pulling something from his vest. It was an envelope, worn and creased, her name written across the front in bold, slanted letters. "Been holding on to this for months," Jack said. "Didn't know if we'd ever find you." Mary took it slowly, her fingers brushing the rough paper. Inside, a folded letter waited, the ink smudged in places like it had been written in the rain. She unfolded it, her breath catching as she read the first line. "Mary, you don't know me, but I owe your husband my life." Her knees felt weak, and she sat down hard on the porch steps. The letter told of a firefight overseas, of a young soldier named David Dalton pulling an injured Marine to safety under enemy fire. That Marine was Tom Riker. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't get to shake your hand and say thank you. But I can make sure you know what kind of man you married." Mary's eyes blurred with tears. She didn't notice the riders shifting quietly, giving her space. When she looked up, Jack was watching her with a kind of quiet respect. Tom talked about that day a lot, he said. Said it was the moment he started believing in second chances. After the Corps, we took him in and he rode with us until the end. But there was one thing he never stopped saying, that he owed you something. Mary's voice was barely above a whisper. Why me? I didn't save him. Jack shook his head. Because you kept the man who grounded. Tom always figured David stayed alive long enough to save him because he had you to come home to. From one of the other bikes, a rider produced a small, oil-stained box. Jack took it, placing it gently in Mary's hands. This was Tom's. He wanted it to be yours. She hesitated, unsure if she was ready to open it. But as the engines cooled around her, she realized the night wasn't about fear anymore. It was about a connection born on a battlefield she'd never seen. Mary turned the box over in her hands. It was small, wooden, and worn smooth at the edges. The latch clicked softly as she opened it. Inside was a silver Zippo lighter, scratched and dented from years of use, along with a photo. David and a younger man she recognized from the letter as Tom, both grinning in desert fatigues. Tucked beneath them was a folded red bandana, sun-faded but still holding a trace of desert dust. Jack spoke quietly. That lighter was your husband's. Tom carried it every day after that firefight. Said it reminded him of someone who thought his life was worth risking for. Mary's throat tightened. She traced the photo, noticing David's arm slung easily over Tom's shoulder. These weren't just tokens. They were pieces of a story she hadn't known she was part of. Why bring them now? She asked. Jack's eyes were steady. Because some debts don't get mailed. Jack motioned for one of his riders, a tall man with a braided beard, to step forward. He handed Mary another envelope. This one was thicker, sealed with tape. Tom kept this for years, Jack said. Said it wasn't to be opened until it found you. Mary peeled the tape back and slid out several pages. It was Tom's journal entry from the day David saved him. The writing was raw, unfiltered. Dalton didn't hesitate. Bullets flying, smoke choking us. He grabbed me by the vest and dragged me like I weighed nothing. Didn't care about himself, only that I made it out. The words pulled her into a scene she'd never witnessed but could suddenly feel. Jack's voice cut gently through her thoughts. We rode here tonight because this wasn't just about telling you what happened. It was about showing you your family now, whether you knew it or not. The air between them shifted. Mary realized these men weren't here to intimidate. They were here to honor. Family? She asked. Jack nodded. Tom's family was gone. You were the only connection he had to the man who gave him another shot at life. That made you his. The riders stood quietly in the cold, engines cooling, breath visible in the dark. Mary looked at the bandana, the lighter, the photo, and felt a strange warmth. These strangers had carried her husband's story across miles to her doorstep. Why was the patch in the woods? She finally asked. Jack's jaw tightened. We think someone took it from Tom's grave. Finding it here. Maybe it was meant to lead us to you. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Maybe chance had nothing to do with it at all. Jack's gaze softened. We want you to have something else, he said. He reached into his vest and pulled out a fresh Hell's Angels patch. Not torn, but whole, the stitching bold against the black leather. This was meant for Tom's replacement, he explained. But the club voted. It's yours now, not to wear, but to keep. Mary took it gingerly. The weight wasn't physical, it was history, brotherhood, loyalty stitched into cloth. I don't ride, she said with a faint smile. Jack chuckled. Doesn't matter. This isn't about the ride. It's about the road that connects us. The words sank deep. She thought of David's letters from overseas, the ones about keeping promises no matter the distance. Tonight, that promise had rolled up her driveway on 7 roaring engines. Before they left, Jack stepped closer. There's a meet next month. We want you there. No pressure. Just Come see what your husband's sacrifice built." Mary looked at the bikes, their chrome glinting under the porch light. For years, she'd lived with David's absence as a quiet ache, something too heavy to share. Now, she understood his life had rippled outward, touching people she'd never known. "I'll think about it," she said honestly. Jack smiled, a rare, small thing. "That's all we ask." Engines roared back to life, headlights sweeping over the yard. As the riders pulled away, Mary stood on the porch holding the lighter in one hand, the patch in the other. For the first time in years, the silence after an engine's fade didn't feel empty. It felt like the beginning of something new. A week passed before Mary made her decision. The invite to the Hells Angels meet sat on her kitchen counter, next to the lighter and bandana. She'd picked it up, put it down, and stared at it more times than she could count. The morning of the meet, she slipped the patch into her bag and drove out of town. The rumble of engines reached her before she saw them. Dozens of bikes lined up in a field, chrome flashing in the sun. Jack spotted her from across the crowd and gave a single nod, like he'd known she'd come all along. As she stepped out of her car, conversations quieted, eyes turning toward her. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, but there was no hostility in their stares. Only respect, the kind that came from knowing you'd played a part in saving one of their own. Jack led her through the gathering, introducing her to men with calloused hands and weathered faces, each offering a handshake or a quiet, "Glad you're here." They showed her Tom's old bike, polished until it gleamed, the same bandana she now owned tied to the handlebars. "We keep it this way for him," Jack said. Mary ran her fingers along the leather seat, feeling the weight of the history it carried. Later, a younger rider handed her a framed photograph. Tom, standing next to David, both grinning like they just cheated death. "He kept this on his wall," the rider said. "Said it reminded him that some people come into your life to pull you out of hell." Mary swallowed hard. The longer she stayed, the more she realized this wasn't a club. It was a family forged in fire, one her husband had touched without her ever knowing. As the day went on, Mary heard stories, some about Tom's quick wit, others about his stubborn streak in a fight. But one story stopped her cold. An older member named Vince recalled the firefight where David saved Tom. "I was there," Vince said, eyes narrowing at the memory. "We thought Tom was gone. Then your man came tearing through the smoke, dragging him like a sack of potatoes, bullets snapping all around. Didn't stop, didn't look back." Vince paused, his voice thickening. "Tom never forgot it. Neither did we." Mary listened, the image forming in her mind so vividly she could almost smell the gunpowder. She'd always known David was brave, but hearing it from someone who'd been there lit a new kind of pride in her chest. She realized then that her husband's courage had stitched invisible threads between strangers, threads still holding years after he was gone. Toward evening, the gathering shifted. Jack called everyone together, the air charged with the low rumble of idling bikes. "Family," he began, his voice carrying across the open field. "Today we honor two brothers, one who rode with us, and one who never did, but lived by our code all the same." He gestured for Mary to step forward. Every eye followed her as she joined him. Jack held up the patch she'd found in the woods. "This was stolen from Tom's grave," he said. "But maybe it wasn't lost. Maybe it was sent, so we could find her." He handed it back to Mary. "You're not here by accident. You're here because your man's loyalty runs further than any road we ride." The applause that followed was rough but genuine, the sound of leather palms and calloused hands clapping in unison. Mary stayed until the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Before she left, Jack walked her to her car. "You've got a place here now," he said. "Don't matter if you ride or not." She smiled faintly. "David would have liked that." Jack tilted his head. "I think he already knew." On the drive home, the wind rushing past her open window carried more than cool air. It carried a sense of connection she hadn't felt in years. At home, she placed the patch, lighter, and bandana together on the mantel beside David's folded flag. The house felt different now, less empty. She understood something she hadn't before. Love doesn't vanish when someone's gone. It lingers in the lives they've touched, sometimes roaring back to you on two wheels in the dead of night. A few nights later, Mary was back on her porch when the distant rumble of engines rolled over the hills. It wasn't as loud as before, just 3 bikes this time. Jack stepped off first, carrying something wrapped in oilcloth. "We found this going through Tom's storage," he said, placing it in her hands. Inside was a cassette tape and a small player. She pressed play, and Tom's voice filled the night. "Mary, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. I wanted you to know that your husband wasn't just a hero that day. He was the reason I lived long enough to find brothers, to find purpose. You saved me, too, by loving him." The tape clicked off. Mary stood silent, the weight of those words pressing deep. Jack's eyes softened. "We thought you should hear it from him." For the first time in years, she felt whole. Mary invited them inside, and they sat in the living room, the cassette player on the coffee table beside David's folded flag. They shared coffee, trading quieter stories, not of battles or danger, but of Tom's dry humor, his knack for fixing anything with duct tape, the way he could charm an entire diner staff. Mary found herself laughing, something she hadn't done like this since before David's death. When the night wore down, Jack stood. "We'll head out, but you call, we come. No questions." She believed him. The angels weren't about appearances or fear. They were about loyalty that ran deep, the kind forged in moments most people never see. As they left, she realized she no longer felt like an outsider to their world. She was part of the chain now, linked by courage, loss, and the kind of gratitude that rides forever. Winter melted into early spring, and Mary began seeing bikes pass through town more often. Sometimes they'd stop just for coffee or to check in. Other times, she'd find small tokens left on her porch. A patch, a photo, a note. Each one felt like a thread tying her tighter to a story that started long before she knew it existed. One sunny afternoon, she drove to Tom's grave, carrying the restored patch. She knelt, brushing away leaves, and set it gently against the stone. "You made it back where you belong," she whispered. Standing there, she realized the patch had never been lost. It had been sent on a journey, much like the men who wore it. A journey that had ended at her door, not to close a chapter, but to open one she hadn't known she needed. That summer, Mary attended her first long ride. She didn't ride herself. She followed in her car. But when they stopped in small towns, she stood among them as if she'd been there all along. People noticed the way the angels treated her, the quiet space they made for her in their circle. By the end of the ride, she understood why David's act had meant so much to Tom. Saving someone's life wasn't just about the moment in the firefight, it was about everything that came after, the life that person went on to live. And in Tom's case, it had been a life loud with loyalty, laughter, and the roar of engines. Mary realized she hadn't just gained new friends. She'd inherited a second family, one that didn't fade with distance or time. On the anniversary of David's passing, Mary stood on her porch at sunset. She could hear them before she saw them, the low, steady rumble of bikes on the road. Jack led the procession, slowing as they passed, each rider raising 2 fingers in a silent salute. No speeches, no ceremony, just the sound of engines carrying respect. As the last tail light disappeared, Mary felt an ache that was no longer just loss. It was pride, gratitude, and the comfort of knowing David's story still lived, carried by people who understood its weight. She glanced at the patch framed on her wall, next to the lighter and bandana. Some connections defy logic, time, and distance. They find you, hold you, and ride with you, even when you think you're alone. Some debts can't be repaid with words, only with miles and the will to keep a promise alive. If Mary's story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell, so more stories of loyalty, brotherhood, and the roads that bring us together can ride straight to you.